what I've noticed for the advancement of a very, very good weightlifter, that is natural, and you coach a lot of those people. There needs to be an expansion of that GPP and that the expansion of that sub-max programming, that thing that requires a lot more nuance. Is it possible that some of these countries, I know Bulgaria absolutely lacked any nuance to their programming, right? That's not
Well,
even, but are we experiencing currently the big like natural experiment?
well,
Is this our time to take our best athletes and see which way of training works best for natural athletes, which will be something that's vastly different from what we all know, which is the Soviet methodology.
I think that the methods that work for natural athletes are the same methods that work for athletes on drugs. And I believe that to give a little lesson here to people as to what's going on with the drugs, if we understand the concept of volume landmarks, right? And volume landmarks are basically just how much training is the minimum amount of training you have to do to get better, to make gains. And then what is the point, the maximum recoverable volume, the most you can do and still recover from, not necessarily the most you can do and survive, but the most you can do and recover from and be able to train again. And as you train, as anyone trains, a beginner starts, and that minimum effective volume is really low. When you go to the gym the first day, you could probably do one set of bench presses and get stronger next time, right? You'd be stronger by the next time. And you could probably bench press every day before you really got too tired or too fatigued to keep bench pressing. So your MEV is really low and your MRV is really high. There's this huge window. The distance between those points is really far. For example, if your MEV is 10 sets or 3 sets of bench press and your MRV is 30 sets, there's a huge window. So everything and anything you do is probably going to be enough to get better, but not even close to enough to stop you from recovering. As you get better at training, as you improve, as you get stronger, those 2 points move closer to each other, right? The amount of training you have to do to get better moves closer to the most training you can possibly do, right? You see this all the time with every athlete goes through this. So, you get to a point where the amount of training you have to do to actually improve is basically really, really close to the most training you can do and still be recovering from.
Right.
And you get stuck in a place where there's no way to break over that. You can't just do more training because you won't recover from it. And if you do less, then you're not going to make any progress. So here's the key here is that there's no way necessarily to spread those points back further apart. So as you progress in your career, you're not going to be able to move those points further away from each other, except for one scenario, right?
If you take them supplements.
Steroids.
Grandpa's cough medicine.
Yeah, grandpa's cough medicine. So if you take drugs, there's a famous study a well-known study where they gave, 3 groups of people. One group trained and didn't take drugs. One group didn't train and didn't do anything. And then one group trained and took drugs. And then one group just took drugs and didn't train, right? And at the end of this, what we found out, the group that trained and took drugs made tons of progress. The group that didn't take drugs but trained made some progress. But the group that only took drugs gained more muscle mass than the group that just trained.
Right.
Which shows that what happened was essentially taking the drugs lowered their minimum effective volume to 0. So the drugs spread those points out further. They move your ability to recover and train up, and they reduce the amount of training you have to do to make progress. So that's why you see, that's the obvious reason why you see that people can continue to progress and grow and get stronger and bigger. You look at Liu Jiajun's been on the Chinese national team for how many decades?
Yeah.
There's no other person in China that's more talented. That's like, there's not 10 more guys better, right?
Right.
I mean, if that's not their system is not a matter of just get millions and millions of people into it and run
then
them
keep
through
one.
and
Yeah.
just keep, yeah. Well, I mean, you've seen the same guys on the team for a long time.
Right.
If the case was truly that you find the absolute most freaky people, and whatever person is more freaky, you take them. It isn't. They're developing lifters, and they're sticking with people.
So Li Da-yin, I don't know how recent this was, but he clean and jerked 215. Lou has also done like 220 in training.
Right.
But you don't know what their body weights are or whatever.
Yeah.
But
And it's like, they've got a lot of guys, and there's other reasons possibly for selecting. You take the guy you know is going to win, right?
Yeah.
But the point being that it isn't so much about, like, think about this. If we know that physiologically you're not going to be able to move those points away from each other, and you're China and you have millions of dollars of resource and slave labor and whatever else you want, you can go to the iPhone factory and force them to do whatever. You've got one bet. You're going to dump all your money into that bet. What are you going to dump your money into? How do I pass drug tests?
Yeah.
Because it's the one thing
it's
that
the
you
only
can
thing
guarantee is going to work well. They're not putting money into, let's spend all of our money and time researching the 5 concepts of weightlifting. What are they? Are they slow, fast, close, low? Sign up for the strength seminar now? Like what?
Yeah.
It's like, they're like, how do we not get caught taking drugs? Look at Russia and Sochi. They didn't spend all their money on, like, let's research better technique. There's got to be a better way to clean the bar. What they do? They build a fucking KGB building next to the drug testing lab.
Right. And then they snuck out the piss tests through a hole.
Yeah. They spent, probably how much money they had to spend on, R&D to figure out how to open up those glass, the vials you pee in. Like, they probably spent more on that than they did on the actual sport, because, well, if we can figure this out, we've got, cats, we're done. And it's like, the reality is a lot of the training stuff has been sorted out for the most part. There's going to be innovations, there's going to be adjustments, but the gross understanding of how to train and lift and compete in the sport is pretty well understood. And here it's well understood more. It's not like it's not like 1997 when everyone's kind of in the dark still and kind of curious as to what goes on. That stuff's not going to change much, because we know the single biggest factor, Ilya Ellen going from a 245 squat jerk to a 197
clean and barely jerk run off the platform.
Yeah, right. Like, I wish 2014 Ilya would come back, 2015 Ilya would come back.
Yeah,
but that's it's not there. So it's like, that's the thing, is like,
so
all these arguments about, like, oh, they're doing it better, but we know exactly what they're doing. We know where the money's going. It's all obvious. We know where all the energy's going. So I guess the argument to me is just so pointless.